What is going on, everybody? Xaenca here, back once again with another video just for you. Friendly reminder as always, if you do end up enjoying this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. I love how bent out of shape people get about their Marvel movies, whether somebody says that they don't like Marvel movies.
Thoughts that should not be controversial. I don't like Marvel movies. Oh, it is controversial. Oh no.
Or God forbid they have anything but glowing praise for the damn things. But I put out my Avengers Endgame review out very recently, and god damn did I piss off a lot of people. But because I feel like I haven't pissed off enough people just yet, let's do a follow-up to that video. Because if you haven't already determined from my style of videos yet, I just don't really give a fuck if I piss you off or not. And I don't discriminate views. You can dislike all you want. A view is a view. Shit, give me 1,000,000 dislikes. I don't give a fuck. That's 1,000,000 views. Granted, I am very appreciative of the supportive side of the fence. The people who've been liking the videos, sharing the videos, shit. The people who've been defending me in the comments, man, I love you guys. You guys are awesome. Now with that out of the way, it's time to piss a lot more people off, so let's jump into it. Now this video is going to be more of a rant. It's going to be all over the place, although a lot of people said that the last one was very ranty and not a cohesive review, but I don't know, however what you feel about it. We're just gonna talk about things that I may not have brought up in the last video or in response to what people had to say about the last video. So first things first, I forgot to bring this up in the last video, but it did annoy the crap out of me. When the movie ended and Peter Parker goes back to his high school because, you know, he's been vanished for 5 years by the Thanos snap, why hasn't time moved forward in Queens? Because as he had that Sam and Frodo moment with his fat Filipino friend Ned, I couldn't help but notice that not only has Ned not aged at all, but he has to be dumb as shit if he's still in high school after 5 years. I mean, didn't Scott Lang's daughter Cassie age 5 years? Didn't time move forward 5 years for everybody? Why not Queens? What makes Queens, New York so special? Now the whole Nebula thing. So after reading the comments, a lot of people pointed out that maybe Nebula didn't know the logistics behind the soul for a soul thing. I went back and looked into it again, and in Infinity War her exact words were, Gamora, he took her to Vormir. He came back with the Soul Stone. She didn't. Now the thing is, Tony was in that scene too, so like, it just, I don't know, it just bothers me that this didn't spark any conversation at all. Mind you, Tony and Nebula were stuck in space for 21 days. They didn't talk about any of this. Neither of them cared to bring it up during the whole Vormir conversation when they were talking about where they were gonna go, different points in time and whatever. Nothing like, isn't it a little bit suspicious that he went with her and came back without her but came back with the stone? Nothing like that. I mean, Tony's supposed to be a genius, but I don't know, whatever. I concede that you guys may be right. You probably didn't know the logistics behind the soul for a soul thing, and even though those conditions are suspicious as hell, neither Nebula nor Tony decided to bring it up that Thanos and Gamora went to Vormir, he came back with the Soul Stone and without Gamora. Not suspicious at all. Now speaking of Tony and Nebula in space for 21 days, this line I said in the last video grinded a lot of people's gears. So Carol Danvers, for whatever reason, was just flying her jolly ass through space and just happened to bump into Tony Stark's ship. Because as we all know, the universe is tiny like that, you know what I mean? So she carries the entire ship with Tony Stark and Nebula in it all the way back down to Earth, and yay, she saves Tony Stark, guys, what a hero. Which sparked outrage in the comments. They're like, dumbass, didn't you see the post-credit scene for Captain Marvel? Rocket Raccoon clearly sent her into space to look for Tony, idiot. Alright, that's fair, but before I explain to you why that makes it so much worse than the scenario I pointed out, when I said what I said, I have not yet seen a Captain Marvel post-credit scene. I didn't know that Marvel put it out on YouTube for everyone to see, but I was aware of the scene, so I probably just chose to block it out of my mind, much like most things Captain Marvel. And no, I have not seen Captain Marvel, probably never will see Captain Marvel, especially seeing how terrible she was in Endgame. Will probably be the only MCU movie up to Endgame that I have not seen. Or won't see. But now let me tell you why that scene being the explanation makes things so much worse. Captain Marvel right now has made $1.13 billion at the box office. Avengers Endgame right now has made $1.785 billion at the box office. Now obviously we won't know what the average ticket price for 2019 is until 2020, but if we use the average ticket prices for 2018, rounding the numbers, roughly 122 million people went to see Captain Marvel and 196 million people went to see Avengers Endgame so far. Now Now, looking at these numbers, there's a 74 million difference in people or ticket sales. Now, if the 74 million in ticket sales were potentially unaware of the post-credit scene in Captain Marvel, that means to 37% of the people that went to watch Avengers Endgame, the scene played out the way I described it. Now, I know I'm generalizing the numbers, but it's just to make the point. Obviously, the numbers aren't exact, but there is a large enough portion of the audience that was not aware of the Captain Marvel post-credit scene. Now, I'm not picking on Captain Marvel here, because this actually affects how I feel about the Ant-Man and the Wasp post-credit scene as well. Before you guys brought it up, it was fine to me because I saw the scene, and when I watched Avengers Endgame, it just continued from what I saw. But now that I think about it, I enjoy post-credit scenes as much as the next guy, but they should not be integral to explaining the plot of the following movie. Because as much as that Captain Marvel contrivance annoyed me of her just popping up and saving Tony Stark, I can't imagine how annoying it must have been for the people who have not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp or that movie's post-credit scene. That makes it so much worse. I mean, post-credit scenes are supposed to hype you up for the following movie, but again, should not be integral to explaining something that happens in that following movie. Anything that detracts from a movie's ability to stand on its own is a bad thing. But that's just me, I guess. Moving on, so now we address all the people that mentioned comics in the comments. Jesus Christ, people. But Fat Thor was in the comics, you dumbass. Yeah, well, I never read that comic, and it doesn't really matter. Just because something happens in the comics does not mean it serves this story. Now, I reference comics when it comes to things like power level and things that don't really change all that much from writer to writer, because that is the problem when it comes to the comics argument. Oh, it's in the comics. Well, they have different writers. Just look at the Captain America Hail Hydra thing. You think fans just accept that? I mean, is that supposed to happen in the MCU now too? Is Steve Rogers supposed to become a Nazi? Long story short, just because it happens in the comics doesn't mean it's a good thing. Especially nowadays that Marvel comics have gone completely to shit. But while we're on the subject of that, there were people that were like, well, Captain America did get Mjolnir in the comics. And this is entirely my fault. I'm gonna take ownership of this because I did not really elaborate as to why I said I don't know how I feel about Captain America getting Mjolnir in the movie. Because it's not that I didn't find it cool or anything. I mean, I thought that was dope. I mean, the combination of Mjolnir and the shield, God, that was awesome. But the reason I felt so iffy about it was because it further kind of castrated Thor. Because if he wasn't already butchered enough, you now basically told the audience that he was no longer worthy of Mjolnir. So it's weird, like if they didn't end up butchering Thor, if he was just a normal Thor that we saw in Infinity War and it came down to that same scene and Mjolnir went to Captain America, I would not feel like it's because Thor is not worthy, but because Captain America is also worthy, which would be a callback to the Age of Ultron thing. Which, for those of you that don't remember, they had a scene there where everybody's trying to lift Thor's hammer and nobody can do it. Steve Rogers goes up to it and he's able to shake it a little bit, which surprises even Thor. But the fact that they had Thor just so goddamn pathetic in this movie, it just made me feel like, alright, well, Thor's no longer worthy. Might as well go to Cap. You know what I mean? So that's why I didn't know how to feel about it. And I know that me even saying that Thor was so goddamn pathetic in the movie is already causing a ton of dislikes as we speak. But I don't really give a fuck. I watched the Key Issues Endgame Ruined Thor video. That video is awesome, very well articulated, very well done, and somehow even that got a ton of dislikes. So I'm just like, man, all that does is remind me of that George Carlin quote. Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that. But yeah, you guys should check that video out. It's a great video. It's called How Marvel Redeemed Thor, Then Endgame Ruined Him. Now, I would say this next one was surprising if we didn't already know that Captain Marvel fanatics are stupid as fuck.
How could she have ruined the movie if she was only in it for 15 minutes, you dumbass?
This they comment, by the way, on a video titled Captain Marvel Didn't Ruin Avengers Endgame. And I say within the video that Captain Marvel didn't ruin Avengers Endgame. Now what I do say is that she made the movie much worse, and I explained in the video why. Because she was shoehorned in, this whole Tony Stark and Nebula stuck in space thing that they made such a big deal about in the trailer was just put there to make Captain Marvel look good in the beginning. Her performance was terrible. Anytime she delivered any lines, she sounded like a valley girl with a load stuck in her throat. She's already shoehorned in. At the end, she shows up and destroys the mothership in 2 seconds. Who wants to see that? Which is funny because now that I think about it, if they did that scene well, like if she had to actually put up a fight against that mothership, I may have taken her seriously. But instead, she just flies through the ship in 2 seconds, blows it up, and I'm like, what the fuck is this, One Punch Woman? Am I not supposed to be taking this seriously? Because One Punch Man is not supposed to be taken seriously, it's a comedy. And the whole not flinching when Thanos headbutts her, really? You thought that that was a good idea? And it's funny because if I think about it, if she wasn't already destroyed by that 2-second destroying the mothership scene and that "Hi Peter Parker, I'm Carol Danvers" load stuck in her throat, Kevin Feige's, and we didn't just get that really, really cringe like pan out "I am Whammans, hear me roar, girl power" scene. Like, hypothetically, we just saw the awesome Scarlet Witch scene at this point, and we already saw like some not heavy-handed like cool women shots, like Pepper showing up and so on and so forth. And then let's say like she shows up and she actually struggles to defeat the mothership, but she still does at the end. I would be like, alright, that's commendable. And then let's say that same showdown with Thanos happens. Let's just erase the whole cringe stupid pan out thing, because that was, goddamn, that was so bad. Now let's say that same headbutt doesn't make her not flinch at all, but instead like knocks her down, but she gets back up and keeps on fighting. And then let's say like Thanos really makes her struggle, but she keeps on persevering. I would have been impressed by that. I would have been like, oh, damn, that's pretty cool. And then you may be asking like, well, that doesn't make sense because you were perfectly fine with Scarlet Witch owning Thanos. But that's the thing, Scarlet Witch was not shoehorned into this situation. She was in Infinity War. She lost Vision to Thanos. She's fully angry and wants to avenge that. There is an arc there. There is a reason for her. There are stakes involved as to why she wants to beat Thanos. That's why when she comes up to him and she's like, "You took everything from me," and then he's like, "I don't even know who you are." "You will." And I was like, man, that was a really well delivered scene. Now compare that to Captain Marvel just showing up out of nowhere. Hasn't lost anybody, maybe Fury if you want to count that, but fights Thanos easily and is only knocked away because of the Power Stone. And then you'll see comments like, "Oh, if she was a man you wouldn't have any issues with this." And this is the type of like SJW dumbass motherfucker that makes people unable to take their movements seriously. Because no, moron, this is the same reason why I'm not particularly fond of Superman. And Superman actually has weaknesses. He has kryptonite, he has his relationships with people, he has that whole messiah complex where he wants to be the savior for all humanity and he doesn't always succeed at that. And I'm still not particularly fond of him because he's too goddamn strong. It's not fun to watch, it's not fun to read in my opinion, so I mean, Captain Marvel is basically Superman without kryptonite. Now I do enjoy One Punch Man, but that's because it's a comedy, it's making fun of that particular trope. So no, you imbeciles, it's not because she's a Whammons, I don't care about that. It's because she's a terrible character, terribly written into the plot, and played by a terrible actress. Simple as that. Now as far as that mothership being destroyed, somebody commented that that was originally planned for the Incredible Hulk to, be fully enraged by the loss of Black Widow, and that makes sense. I mean, that was built up throughout the different Avengers movies, that through that anger, he basically goes Hulk smash on that mothership. Now that absolutely should have happened instead of this, whatever the hell this was, Soy Boy Hulk. And then after destroying the mothership, he should have laid some kind of beat down on Thanos and then removed from the fight somehow. Like, the Hulk storyline should have just continued off Infinity War, where he's still like afraid of Thanos, but the death of Black Widow causes him to, get over that fear because he's like, that son of a bitch, I'm gonna get him for it. You know what I mean? That makes sense as far as storytelling goes. But the more I think and talk about this, it just feels like Marvel doesn't really care about telling good stories anymore. And I guess the last thing I'm gonna talk about is because the more I thought about it, the more kind of weirded out I was about the whole Steve Rogers ending thing. So let's ignore the fact that it contradicts the rules that they laid out throughout the movie as far as like the butterfly effect and so on and so forth. Instead, we have this thing where he goes back in time, he stays there, and then they look to the bench and he's been there the entire time. Well, that kind of implies that he's been within this timeline the entire time. He grew old within this timeline. Now, obviously, Sharon Carter is Peggy Carter's niece, so it's not like incest level weird, because like, I mean, if it was the daughter, it would have been like incest level weird. But young Steve Rogers previously had relations with Sharon Carter, right? So now that he goes back in time and he grows old with Peggy, and if he ended up marrying Peggy, isn't that kind of like, in a weird way, he banged his niece? Obviously in a different timeline, but you see what I'm saying? Or was it the grandniece? I don't know. I'm just saying, it's a little bit weird. But something to think about, I guess, if you want to taint like your image of that Steve Rogers growing old ending. But that's all I got for this one. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. If you did end up enjoying this video, make sure to hit that like button and share it with your friends, family, whoever you think would be interested in nonsense like this. And subscribe, ring that notification bell, and click that always so you can always be alerted every time I put out another one of these Southwest grilled chicken salads. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.
Bye.